When I was a kid, I loved to play tackle football. There was an empty lot beside my parents' house. And every day after school until supper, and on weekends until dark, you'd find me there with my friends playing tackle football. In the fall and winter, this lot would freeze, so it would turn hard as steel, like a warrior shield. In the spring, it would thaw and turn into a muddy slushy. And in the summer, heat would rise off of it. And it got so hot that it was almost like looking at the desert. It was a tough place to play football. But I loved playing football there because feeling tough was important to me. It was as important as food, shelter, and water for me as a kid because I was raised in a family with all girls. Now, playing football here was very interesting because I knew that my football aspirations to take my football career to another level would never go anywhere other than that empty lot. I wasn't allowed to play football because my mother said so. My mother forbid me to play football because her mother had forbid her brothers to play football. In her words, "If you play football, you will get paralyzed." What kind of thing is that for a nice Jewish grandmother to say to her 9-year-old grandson? She couldn't even say the word correctly. Paralyzed! With her Yiddish accent, it was almost sounded like a plague from the Old Testament. And for the longest time, I thought if I ever donned a football helmet and a pair of shoulder pads and stepped onto a football field and disobeyed my mom, that this paralyze, like a pair of pants, would descend upon me and squeeze me until I couldn't breathe. And so as the son of an artist, I channeled my love of the sport into the next best thing. I fell in love with drawing pictures of football players. Every Friday after school, me and my guy friends would get together and have art sleepovers. What? We'd check out a huge stack of library books from the library and spend all night drawing football player pictures. I absolutely loved how the uniforms made the football players look like superheroes. I loved drawing the face masks. Each one was different. It was like drawing a maze. And I loved drawing the football players' hands. There was one picture I drew of Lynn Swann, the wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and as he was reaching out for the ball looked like it was descending from heaven, and his fingers looked like they were reaching up to touch the sky. I loved to draw pictures of football players. But as I got older, this love of drawing football players just didn't fulfill me in the same way. And so I took that love of football and channeled it once again in a new direction. When I got to high school, I asked my parents to buy me an alto saxophone, and I joined the high school marching band. Now, I knew that every Friday night, the high school marching band would be down at the football field, and right there at halftime, I'd be close to the game that I loved so much. Now, high school football players, they're cool. High school marching band members, they're not so cool. High school football players get to run scrimmages during the summer on the practice field. High school marching band members, they get to practice scales in the faculty parking lot. High school football players, they look like gladiators in the uniforms. High school marching band members look like they're going to work as cashiers at Burger King. High school marching band wasn't so cool, but that didn't bother me so much because I saw my role as an alto saxophone player as a mere stepping stone to something much greater. I longed with every fiber of my being to one day become a drummer in the drum section. The drummers, were cool. All the drummers have mustaches. They all had girlfriends, and they were at least 20 years older than anyone else in the band. But best of all, the drummers, they were tough. I knew my mom would never buy me a drum set or even spring for drum lessons because I never practiced the instrument that I had. And so I knew that she would never appreciate this dream that I had to move on to something better. It was funny. It didn't matter to me because I longed with every fiber of my being to belong to that drum section. Now, I was 7th chair alto saxophone. 7th chair. Football teams don't even have 7 strings anymore. If you didn't know a thing about music and you went out today to the pawn shop next door and bought an alto saxophone and showed up to try out for the high school marching band, you would start as the 7th chair. There aren't even 7 strings on a guitar. But that didn't matter. I kept that dream alive deep inside my heart. And I know there are some things about ourselves that no one ever knows about us. But as fate would have it, during Christmas break of my sophomore year, I would get to capture that dream, much like a linebacker rushes through the offensive line and captures the quarterback and throws him down on the ground and gets called for a penalty for unnecessary roughness, 15 yards. The dream was important to me. Well, during my sophomore year, during Christmas break, our high school marching band, we were invited down to play in the Williamsburg Christmas Eve parade. And so that morning, the entire band met at the school. We took the bus down to Colonial Williamsburg and arranged ourselves on the cobblestone streets. Now, in front of us were the World War II veterans in their green-gray uniforms and their little triangle red hats. And behind us were the Shriners and their tiny cars. Their chins were resting on their knees. And they had their own funny-looking hats that looked like a toilet paper roll with a graduation tassel attached to the top. Now, the plan during the parade was to play my favorite Christmas song of all times, White Christmas. Now, back then it was my favorite song because the alto saxophone section had a solo in the middle. It kind of went like this. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, da-da-da. That's the saxophone solo. Da-da-da. Every time I hear this chromatic dissension now, da-da-da, it reminds me of being 6 years old, and I've got my father's huge blaze orange hunting cap on, and it's inching down my nose, and I've got my huge Cookie Monster blue mittens on, and I'm on a sled, and I'm careening down a hill. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, da-da-da, just like the Brunswicks. The parade was going along great. We were 20 minutes into the song. We had played it a few times, and then all of a sudden, the band didn't have the same oomph that it once did. Jimmy Moore, our tuba player, was the first one to start marching sideways, and he looked behind us. And then all of a sudden, we were all marching sideways and looking behind us. And there, about a block away, moving further away from us during every measure of the song, were the drummers in this huge pile, in a brawl. Fists were flying, elbows were pumping, and every once in a while you'd see a swatch of polyester cloth fly up into the air. And now we moved farther away from the drummers and caused a space to form, almost like the Red Sea. And so we had that space in there, and something interesting happened behind the drummers with the Shriners. Now, I don't know if you know this, but the Shriners use the same operating manual as geese. You know, geese fly in a V for purposes that are both aerodynamic and efficient. And so when that first Shriner, or goose, or whatever you want to call him, saw that big pile of drummers coming up on him, he decided to take one for the team. He plowed right into the middle of the drum section, and as he hit the bass drum, he leaned over to the side,